Hey, what's up, fantasy friends? Welcome back to BallerBot Fantasy Sports. I am your host, Mark, and you found Week 4 Deep Dive, our massive breakdown of Sunday's main slate, which this week is $100K to the top prize. And guys, we're going to get you there. We give you fantasy football insights, assisted by our secret weapon in the Discord, our BallerBot, that helps you analyze secondary market data to make sure that you are buying things at the appropriate pricing. So with that being said, guys, this is a long video. Let's jump right into it. All right, guys, I am solo this week. The Wizard of Fantasy Sports, Brandon, is not with me. He's actually on the IR, or maybe he's holding out for some extra money like Jonathan Taylor. I don't know. We're still waiting to speak to his agent, but he will be back soon. I'm going to hold down the fort, guys, and get you to the promised land. Let's jump into the first game on the slate, which is the Miami Dolphins at the Buffalo Bills, a total of 53.5. That's right where we like these numbers, above that 47-point threshold. That's our magic number when we're trying to target games, and this game's got it. Look, the Dolphins are coming off of a 70-point thrashing of the Denver Broncos. Some Madden football scores that we see right there, video game style stuff. I don't think we're going to get that type of explosiveness here against the Bills. The Bills definitely have a more formidable defense than we saw with the Denver Broncos. And I think we're going to be in surprise for some of the big dogs that we see on this slate. Now, there's a chance that Steph Diggs has a cap ceiling this week, guys. He's going to be shadowed by Xavier Howard, and he's actually been shadowed by him in the past 3 matchups, and stat lines look like this: 7 for 74, 5 for 60. Now, in the playoffs, he did go off. He had 7 for $114, but 0 touchdowns. So is Stephon Diggs a fantasy play? Yes, week in and week out, especially when you pair him with Josh Allen. You need to have Diggs in your lineup, and sort of like a set it and forget it type of player. But I think you can anticipate a capped ceiling. The max ceiling that he's had with being shadowed by Xavier Howard is about 18 points. So I think you need to temper your expectation there with Diggs when facing Xavier Howard and the Miami Dolphins. Now, something that I do think works in the benefit for the Bills offense is sort of blitz Josh Allen at your own risk. Miami is actually blitzing at 24% of the time, which is 7th highest in the league, guys. And Josh Allen, well, he's completing 68% of his passes against the blitz, and he's got 2 touchdowns when facing a similar situation. The Dolphins are actually allowing a 68% completion rate. So something's going to give here, right? That's the 9th worst in the league for the Dolphins. I think we can see some explosive plays from Josh Allen. I think you just need to temper your expectation with Diggs. Maybe some of those big plays go elsewhere on the field, and there are players you can target, like a Gabe Davis, a Dalton Kincaid, who's really not getting the downfield volume that we would hope. He's sort of getting short to intermediate passes, if that's the right way to say it. But there are options out there for this Bills offense. Now, on the other side of the ball, the Bills are susceptible to the run, guys, especially zone runs. And what does Miami do well? Well, they use outside zone runs. And who can benefit from that? Raheem Mostert, who had a monster game last week, and he might be in line for a big game this week. Now, you're probably wondering, do I go with Mostert or do I go with A-Chain, who is now AFC Player of the Week with his big performance? And it's a coin flip for most people, but for me, I am going back to the well with Raheem Mostert. Mostert actually did well against these Bills last season, where he ran 17 times for about 136 yards with 2 touchdowns. So for me, Mostert is the safer bet, but a chain is knocking on that door, guys. Next up, another way to attack the Bills is with the Dolphins' speedy playmakers in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Now, guys, Tyreek Hill is matchup proof. Again, another player that you can set and forget. The Dolphins are getting creative, moving him around a lot pre-snap to get him free releases. So it really doesn't matter who he's being covered by. He is going to have that space, and all he needs is just a little tiny sliver of space for him to get going. We all know Cheetah is one of the most dominant receivers in the game. He shows it week in and week out. Now, the Bills usually like to play man coverage, which would seem like a mistake against Tyreek Hill, but he hasn't really done all that amazing when facing these Bills. Sort of held him in check for holding Tyreek Hill in check, but somebody that does have the Bills' number is Jalen Waddle, and he returns this week. Last season, he got behind the Bills' secondary quite a bit, going for over 100 yards in both of those matchups, and he should see primary coverage from Christian Benford, who's in his first full season with the Bills. So there's a lot of ways that you can attack this game. High total, going to be something that a lot of fantasy players are concentrated on. These are guys that you want to roster for the full season here in DraftKings Reignmakers. Again, as we always mention, it's a different type of game. It's not just standard DFS. You own the inventory, and these are guys that you can roster confidently going forward. And I won't be mad with whichever way you go. So now moving on to Denver at Chicago with a 46-point total. Now, looking for a field day here, guys. The Broncos ranked dead last in pressure rate. They also allowed 70. Yeah, you heard that right. 70 points last week. And I think Fields is going to benefit in this one. If he doesn't, we might need to shut this guy down and shelf him from our fantasy lineups until he can prove that he belongs in our lineups, guys. Things are trending up for him, though, a bit. He had 5 designed runs through week 1 and week 2. Last week, he had 7. The Broncos missed 25 tackles last week, and 15% of their runs go for 10 yards or more. So rostering a player like Justin Fields, who's mobile, athletic, gets the ball moving with his feet, has a set of wheels on him, I think we could be in for a monster day, a get-right game for Justin Fields against this Denver Broncos team. Now, with Fields, you can do my favorite thing to say this season. You can play him naked. He's your naked quarterback. You do not need to pair him with one of his weapons there in Chicago. You might not want to. Nobody's really standing out right now and is somebody that you need to force into your lineups. I think this is a game that you can play Justin Fields without worry and find some counterparts, throughout the rest of the league that fit better to give you an optimal lineup. And now the Bears counterparts, everybody looks good to me here, guys. I mean, there's not a player that I don't think I wouldn't roster. I mean, anybody you can slot in and feel confident about against this Bears team that does not do a great job of pressuring the other team's quarterback. Their defensive line gives the quarterback a bunch of time to sit back there, purvey the field, and find the best option. Receivers are allowed to run their routes. You're getting the opportunity for chunk plays because the routes are developing. And in this scenario, Russ will be able to take advantage of that. Things are connecting a little bit better with Russell Wilson in the deep ball. He's cooking in that area. And the Bears actually allow a 55% completion rate on passes over 20 yards. It's a big opportunity for the rookie Mims, who's got back-to-back games with Russ looking for him deep. They stopped using him for some reason. He catches like 2 or 3 balls that go for 50-plus yards, and then they don't go back to that well. I'm not sure why, not sure what's going on with the play calling. But this is an opportunity where I think that you're going to see him have the potential to go off and maybe score a deep touchdown or 2 if the Broncos keep looking in his direction. Another potential receiver that you can look for is Courtland Sutton. He's actually facing a rookie DB who's allowing a 69% catch rate. He did well last week, caught a touchdown. I think he is the safer bet than Mims if you're looking for a higher floor, but Mims is your home run threat that you might want to buy low and try to take advantage, maybe possibly moving up from like an elite tier to a legendary or from a rare to elite. Slot this guy in your lineup and see if you can capitalize on some big plays that go off for a bargain bin price out there. And another player that I think you want to kind of have on your radar this week is Javonte Williams. He's facing this Bears defense that's allowing the 5th most TDs to running backs on the season. And we've seen him sort of get phased out of the game plan. He's roughly got 12 to 15 carries a week. Samaje Perine is the 3rd down back. But that's because we're seeing the Broncos not be able to sustain drives. We've seen them playing from behind. This is going to be a totally different ball game. It should be, at least anyway. The Broncos facing this weak Bears defense with a weak defensive line should allow for the Broncos offense to move the ball a little bit more consistently down the field. Sustained drives means more opportunities to get a player like Javonte Williams the ball, one of the best backs in the league at making people miss, breaking tackles, and he is bordering a must start for me as a running back that people aren't going to be on. And again, somebody that you can buy right now on the secondary market for a discounted price as the Broncos start to get right, beginning with this game against the Chicago Bears. Moving along to a game that has an ugly total, guys, we have Baltimore at Cleveland with a 40.5-point total. This is a rough matchup for Lamar, and you have to temper expectations here, guys. Look, the Browns are allowing the fewest fantasy points, yards, and plays per drive to opposing quarterbacks. And Zay Flowers, Lamar Jackson's primary receiving threat, is getting volume, right? Which we love, but it's coming on short passes to mimic a run game. He's not in play for me this week until the Ravens find ways to get him a little bit deeper routes that we can capitalize and get some chunk plays going on here. They're just not coming thus far, and I don't see them coming against this dominant defensive line and stingy defense of the Cleveland Browns. On the other side of the ball, we're going Cooper or we're going Elijah Moore. Amari's seeing about 40% of Cleveland's air yards, and if Marlon Humphrey's still out, he'll have a good matchup versus some of the other DBs that the Baltimore Ravens are going to be matching up against him. Okay, now Elijah Moore has the same amount of targets as Amari Cooper does, but he's used more in pre-snap, helping to free him up, as we mentioned with the Miami Dolphins and Tyreek Hill earlier. So there could be an opportunity for some smash plays for Elijah Moore in this game. The Baltimore Ravens do not have the strongest of defensive lines, and their secondary is a bit weakened. It's kind of a toss-up between these two receivers. You got a safer floor with Amari Cooper. You've got more of a potential for a breakout with Elijah Moore and all that motion, getting him freed up. So I'm not mad if you go with either. I think I'd be going Amari Cooper for myself. One thing, though, that I am staying away from this weekend, guys, with the Browns offense is I am not driving the Ford. The Ravens are built to have an elite rush defense, and they're coming off an outlier last week where they faced Zach Moss, who ran for over 100 yards. This defense will be angry and looking to right the ship, and I don't think that we see that Ford get in motion this week against the Baltimore Ravens, guys. Next up is a team that kills me, the Bengals at the Titans with a 41-point total. Man, I didn't think that we would see the Bengals with such a low total this season at all, but that Joe Burrow injury is decimating his fantasy value. We're really just seeing the B version of Joe Burrow, forced to be a pocket passer, unable to roll out, which limits the play calling. Got to get the ball out quick to protect the calf. You don't want him taking a sack or a big hit, creating a bigger injury concern for the Bengals as they're hoping to be a contender this season. And really focused on a short passing game. You know, that ability of needing to protect Burrow, getting the ball out fast is there's no deep threat going on. And it brings us to a debate of whether we're rostering Chase or Higgins. Last year, we could roster both and feel confident. I think both of these receivers are top 10 receivers in the NFL, but we're talking fantasy value right now. And Higgins, to me, is trending down, while Jamar Chase is at least staying consistent and possibly moving up with the way that they decided to use him last week. They've moved him all around the formation, and that has helped get him involved more in this offense. And Jamar Chase has game-breaking ability, so you can get him involved with putting him in the slot, moving him in motion, doing a screen pass. And I think that's the player that you're going to want to roster going forward until we start to see Joe Burrow heal up, if he does heal up. It sort of forced T. Higgins into being a possession-based receiver, and he didn't fare well last week. He had like 3 drops that hit him right in the hands. Now, that's an outlier. Higgins won't drop the ball as much as we saw last week. But again, I don't think the Bengals offense has that big playability right now with this version of the B version of Joe Burrow. You can mix in if that's what you want to do. Not for me, guys. The Titans defense is actually built to stop the run, same way that the Ravens are. The way that you attack the Titans is through the air. So we're going to see something similar to what we saw last week. Jamar Chase moved around quite a bit. You might see something like 10 catches. Hopefully he gets 100 yards and maybe breaks something, gets you into that 150-yard range with a TD or two. And T. Higgins will be in play near the goal line. He's a bigger bodied receiver that can come down with a jump ball or feel confident that Joe Burrow can force something into him once you get inside the 20s. Titans, none for me. There's no Titans that I want to play this week. I don't trust anybody. We've seen Derrick Henry get out snapped by the backup running back in that situation. And the Bengals defense is surprisingly stingy, guys. So I am hands off the Titans. They are a no-go for me in week 4. Moving on to the next game, guys. I'm trying to keep this one a little bit faster moving. Some of these videos have been over an hour and a half for our deep dives, trying to get a little bit more concise, being that it's only me on the show this week and you don't have to stare at my bald head. So we're moving right along into the Rams at the Colts. A nice total, almost on that magic number of 47 plus. They're at 46 total. Matt Stafford is in play as a streamer, guys. Yep, Matt Stafford without Cooper Kupp, without big brand name weapons out there, aside from Puka Nacua, who we can't roster in DraftKings because there's no cards for the amazing rookie. However, the Colts are a secondary to attack. We've mentioned that in each of our prior deep dive videos. They allow a 69% completion rate, and Stafford is an assassin. Right? He is Matt Stafford. He's done great things in this league. He's won a Super Bowl. He knows how to get the job done, put his receivers in position to succeed. The only receivers that you can stack with him, though, on DK are Tutu Atwell or Tyler Higbee. And this is a good matchup for Tutu, guys. He's catching over 70% of his passes when facing zone. And that's what we see with the Colts defense. They're playing a little bit more zone defense now. He's got 8 targets in his past 3 games, and he's moved all around the formation to get free releases. So Tutu Atwell and Matt Stafford are a sneaky play for me with this 46-point total. Now, coming back on the other side, the Colts offense is quite fantasy friendly. Anthony Richardson is trending to play. Keep an eye on that. But he's got 60% of the Colts runs inside the 5-yard line and 3 TDs on the season. He didn't play last week. So his stats might even be better than the ones that I just announced to you. And Zach Moss has become the bell cow with Jonathan Taylor out. Listen to these stats for Zach Moss. All right, 27 touches per game, 87% snaps, 86% rush attempts, 64% route run on dropbacks. He's getting CMC type usage, and the Rams are allowing a tasty 4.5 yards per carry. Look, he's a must start for me. Zach Moss, I never thought I would say that, is a must start for me in fantasy. Now, Michael Pittman, somebody that our fantasy guru, the Wizard, has been touting week over week, and I agree with him. Michael Pittman is the AJB of the AFC. So last year, the Colts head coach was the Eagles offensive coordinator, and he's using Pittman in similar ways to A.J. Brown over there still in Philly. Now, what's even better is Michael Pittman is seeing screen passes. He's caught about 7 thus far on the early season, which is second in the league. He's a big-bodied physical type receiver, and getting this type of usage just means more volume, for you, and volume equals opportunities in fantasy sports. So Pittman is a play for me, guys. I love Pittman. I think he is quarterback proof in the system, whether it is Gardner Minshew or whether it is Anthony Richardson. I don't think you can go wrong with rostering Pittman. The volume is there. If Richardson does get hurt because he is a more running type quarterback, and Minshew's coming in, you're not going to have to be sitting there cursing out your lineup while you're watching the games on Sunday, because you can sit back confident knowing that Pittman is quarterback proof, and whoever's throwing him the ball is going to get the job done with the way that he's being schemed in this offense. All right, on to another ugly total game. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the New Orleans Saints in the Dome. The Saints, or specifically Marshawn Lattimore, is Mike Evans' kryptonite. Since 2019, Mike Evans is averaging 4.1 targets with only 2 paltry receptions and 35.5 receiving yards and 7.8 PPR points against Marshawn Lattimore in this Saints secondary. I am hands off Mike Evans this week. They just got his number. So shelf him. If you want to look to a player on the Buccaneers offense, you might want to go Chris Godwin. He's not playing as much in the slot as we saw. He's more of an outside receiver this year. They feel that he can win on the outside, but it's not translating onto our fantasy scoreboards. That is going to Mike Evans as the number 1 alpha fantasy player on this team. And Godwin is a clear-cut number 2. However, I think this matchup favors him over Mike Evans. If you got both and you're trying to choose which one to go to, I would go Godwin this week. The Jameis Winston effect out here now for the New Orleans Saints with Carr not playing. Look, we know that Winston historically likes to be a gunslinger, and that adds value to Chris Olave. We liked Olave this year because Derek Carr is a great deep ball passer. And I'm not saying that Winston is on the same level as a deep ball passer as Derek Carr, but he does like to get that ball out, get it thrown deep, throws with volume, doesn't have the fear to put it into places for his receivers to make plays, often does turn into interceptions, right? But all we're looking for is volume. Unless you're a Saints fan, we don't care if they win. We just want to see our guys go off so we can take down that top prize and climb those tournament leaderboards. Now, there's no TDs for Olave on the season, which is concerning, but he's facing a Bucs defense that has allowed a 100-yard receiver in all 3 games. Alvin Kamara might come back this week, and I'm not really that excited right now. His production took a dip last year. We didn't see him do his same explosive plays that we're used to in the 2022 season. So I'm going to wait before I start buying any of these Kamara cards. Again, this is inventory. It's not a DFS game where we buy it and we're done. We can move on. You're going to get stuck holding the bag on these Kamara cards, and I just need to see what goes on there before I am ready to buy up Kamara. Next up, we've got the Washington Commanders at the Philadelphia Eagles with a total of 43.5. Still not at that number that we want to target for these games. Howell struggles against pressure. We saw that last week against the Bills. He came back to earth a little bit. He threw 4 interceptions, and now he faces a deeper and more talented Philadelphia Eagles defensive line. Now, the Eagles, however, have been a pass funnel type defense. So Howell might still be at play. If you can stay upright, there might be some opportunities for him to get the ball into some of his playmakers' hands. All right, so you're going to roster Howell anyway. Who are you going to stack him with? I'll tell you, stack him with Dotson. Don't go McLaurin. Why? Because McLaurin is going to be shadowed by Slay, and Slay is a shutdown corner. Just going to make things difficult out there for McLaurin to get the job done. Instead, go Dotson. That's my take on it. Why? Because the Eagles are down their starting slot DB, and that's going to create a nicer matchup for Dotson to take advantage of. And it just gives me a little bit more confidence to pair with Howell in this game against the Eagles. He's a slot receiver. He's going to be there on short, quick passes over the middle to help out Howell when he's jammed up or getting that pressure and just needs to get rid of the ball quickly. All right, where are we going with the Philadelphia Eagles? Now, this is a good game for Jalen Hurts, right? Great matchup. He hasn't thrown multiple touchdowns in any game this season, but he's facing a Commanders defense that allows teams to do just that. We've seen back-to-back games of Josh Allen and Russell Wilson carve them up for multiple touchdowns, and Jalen Hurts should get there too. I think this is a game that we see Hurts get right with his arm. Even if he doesn't, guys, he's got a safe floor. He's somebody that you can roster confidently against this Commanders defense. They allow 30-plus rushing yards per game to a quarterback. So this really could be a big game for Hurts through the air and on the ground, and I am inserting him in my lineup if I own that card. confidently in my Reignmakers tournament. Now, A.J. Brown, should be the wide receiver that benefits. He saw 11 targets last week and dropped 2 in the red zone. Devontae Smith only saw 5 targets. However, he did torch this Commanders defense last season, so he is in play. I'm just leaning more towards A.J. Brown. I think the opportunities are going to be there, and he's got the skill set to take advantage of these Commanders DBs. Wrapping up that breakdown and moving on to the Vikings and the Panthers, who sit right on the cusp of our magic number for the total at 46.5. Kirk Cousins, Mr. Top Fantasy Scoring Quarterback of the 2023 season, has been having insane pass attempt volume. 44, 44, and 50 in his first 3 games. And he's facing a banged up Panthers defense. J.C. Horn, great cornerback for the Panthers, out. Shaq Thompson, out. However, will Cousins need to throw that much without the Panthers pushing him? So if we don't think that the Panthers are going to be able to score a bunch and keep the pressure on the Vikings to keep moving the ball down the field and getting that ball in the end zone, are we going to see the volume that we need to confidently roster Kirk Cousins over some of the other QBs that are in play for this week's DraftKings Reignmakers 100K to first place tournament? Not sure, guys. I think when you've got Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson connection, you can roster him confidently. But this type of game theory that you have to put into your head, are there better games that are going to be a shootout? They're going to fit better. Now, if you are rostering Kirk Cousins this week, you got a choice. Justin Jefferson, Addison, or Hockenson. Jefferson is always a plug and play, right? Don't even need to say that. Addison's getting his reps, but he relies on the deep ball right now, primarily a deep ball threat for the Vikings. So if they're not connecting, you're not scoring. However, TJ Hockenson is getting a ton of targets, guys. He's seeing 8 targets in 10 of his last 13 games since he started suiting up with the Vikings. So I do really think that there is a variety of ways that you can play this game. Kirk Cousins with Justin Jefferson and TJ Hockenson, if you want to go for a double stack, be completely different from some of the other players out there. If you can't afford a Justin Jefferson, but you do have a Kirk Cousins, you can confidently roster him with TJ Hockenson and not have a fear there. Addison is more of a bang or bust play at this moment, although he is coming on strong for the Vikings. Now, somebody that also could be in play for you if you want to do a pivot off of the Vikings quarterback and receivers is Madison. A couple weeks ago, he was on my dog or donkey list, and I said he was a dog, not from his talent level, just from a volume place alone. And last week, he had his best week, guys, 25 touches for 125 scrimmage yards. Now, everybody was saying when Cam Akers comes, he's going to eat into his workload. Now, that's going to happen a little bit, but not enough to matter right now. I just don't think it's enough to matter in this moment. This might be the first game that Akers does play. He's not going to get the volume or eat into enough volume that is going to make you fear rostering Madison. Volume is king in fantasy, guys, and because it equals opportunity. Now, he turns into Madison, or we're mad for playing him. I know, kind of lame, but he turns into that, hang with me, because he's not an explosive type of running back, right? There's no big chunk plays. However, this is a good matchup for him, and he goes back to Madison for me this week because the Panthers are banged up, and they allow 10-plus yard runs, 14% of rushing attempts when they're facing opposing running backs. So I am confident in rostering Madison this week, another week going to the well on volume alone. Now, on the other side of the ball, guys, we have a revenge game coming for Adam Thielen. Many people were down on his stock because he was an older receiver. However, this is his first game against his former club that he played for quite a long time, and it's a juicy matchup. He should see primary coverage from Josh Metellus. I don't even know how to pronounce his name, so he must not be that amazing of a DB. Sorry if you're watching this or his family's watching this. I'm sure you're a great guy, but when it comes to a fantasy matchup, you are somebody right now that we want to target. Your brother, cousin, uncle, whoever Mr. Metellus might be, is allowing a 93% catch rate and a score in coverage so far this season. And on top of that, Minnesota is allowing 6.7 receptions per game to opposing pass catchers coming from the slot. So quite a nice matchup there if you do have a Thielen card that you've ripped from a pack or you've won in one of the pack tournaments. I'm not really going out and buying Thielen. I don't think he's viable long-term for the season, but he is a nice play if you got him. Miles Sanders, same type of situation. I'm not going out to buy him for this game, but he's a serviceable back. Not a game breaker that'll take down tournaments for you. So that is the reason that I am not buying him. Let's keep this one going and move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Houston Texans, 42.5. Seems like we got a lot of low 40s this week, guys. Not many hitting that magic number. For the Steelers, who do I have my eye on? Truly only George Pickens, not Pickett, the one throwing him the ball, Pickens, the one catching it. And why? Because he's being used on more than just deep balls this year. Last year, we saw him as a primarily deep threat, but this year he's being used on slants and underneath stuff, which keeps him in the volume relevant conversation. So Pickens is in play for me if you got him and it's somebody that you're going to be forced to roster. There is an opportunity for him to do well for you this week. As I mentioned before, I am not on Pickett. He had a good game last week, but the Texans are surprisingly good against quarterbacks. Look, they held the Jags and Trevor Lawrence to a very, very disgusting game last week. I gambled on that game and I got crushed on that one. So I'm not happy. So for me, I'm off Pickett this week. I think the Texans, a 49ers defensive coordinator, now head coach, plays that same type of defense where it's a zone type D and really limits the opposing quarterback, makes them work meticulously down the field. Not a lot of chunk plays to be had unless there's a mistake by one of the defenders. So I am off Kenny Pickett this week. Now, on to the Texans. CJ Stroud, guys, doing good things. He's playing behind a banged-up line, one that is missing like nearly half of their starters, and that guy, the Rook, is still getting it done. He's got playmakers in Tank Dell and Nico Collins, and the Steelers' defense is fearful, right? They allow one of the highest pressure rates. I don't know how that fares when you've got a banged-up offensive line, but maybe we just see C.J. Stroud is that type of dude that can get it done. And one thing about the Steelers is if they don't get home when they're bringing that pressure, they allow chunk plays, and this is a big test. But if there is opportunity for C.J. Stroud to make a play, are you going Tank Dell or Nico Collins to be on the receiving end of that? I'm going Tank Dell here, guys. He's just showed that week in and week out, he's trending up in the right direction. He had a breakout game last week. I don't know if he broke up with anybody, but he had a breakout fantasy game last week where he caught 5 balls for 145 yards and a TD. And this week, he's facing a secondary that's been eaten up by Devontae Adams and Brandon Ayuk for over 100 yards and multiple scores. They've each had 2 touchdowns against this Steelers defense. So in play for me are Pickens and Tank Dell, possibly C.J. Stroud. Very, very low-end streamer for me there. But Tank Dell, if you need a fill-in receiver, and Pickens are both players that I would be not mad if I saw them in your lineups this week, even though there are better options out there. Moving along to the Raiders at the Chargers. Woo! Finally, a total that we can get down with. 49 points. And this is a game that's easy to target players. They are concentrated targets going on for both of these teams. We'll start with the Chargers. Keenan Allen is just a target monster, had 20-something of them last week. And with Mike Williams gone for the season, he might get 40 targets a game. No, I'm kidding. I don't think that he's even going to touch that 20-target share this week, but he will be targeted quite a bit. If you're looking to roster anybody else on this Los Angeles Chargers team, I don't trust them. I don't trust Joshua Palmer or the rookie. Palmer had a great sample size to see what he can do last season with Herbert, and he didn't get it done. I think he averaged like 12 fantasy points per game when Keenan Allen was out for an extended period of time or Mike Williams was out. He's just not the guy. So I am Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert dominant when it comes to rostering the Chargers players. Great stack there as well. Now, I'm going to wait and see on Austin Eckler. He might be coming back, or they might give him a little bit of an extra time to heal because the Chargers are on a bye week next week. I think that makes a little bit more sense. Let him heal up rather than risk an injury going into a bye week. However, if he does play, I still am on Herbert and Keenan Allen. I would rather use that superstar tag on Justin Herbert than I would Eckler. I think it makes more sense. Herbert is lighting the world on fire. So I am not sitting down my superstar Herbert for a Austin Eckler. And why would you? Because the Raiders are allowing multiple TDs through the air this season, right? And Keenan Allen is going to be matched up against Nate Hobbs this week, who allows the fourth most receptions, the sixth most targets, and has the fifth most yards after catch when he's targeted as a defender against opposing wide receivers. So those stats alone, guys, are enough to cement Keenan Allen as one of the best plays at the wide receiver position this week. Moving along to the Raiders. Look, got to start Davante Adams no matter what. No matter who his quarterback is, Garoppolo is nursing or possibly coming back from a concussion. Not sure if he is or he isn't. But last season, Davante Adams dominated the Chargers with nearly 150 yards per game and a TD or two in each contest. Somebody else, Jacoby Myers is in play, but if I don't have Garoppolo back there, I don't know if I really want to look in that direction this week. When Garoppolo is in play, even though he's thrown like 6 interceptions on the season, he does have a bunch of touchdowns as well. I think Jacoby Myers is a great secondary receiver to Davante Adams. When all attention is on Davante, you're going to see a lot more open up for Jacoby Myers. I'm not sure the Bobby Hoyer or whatever his name is, I'm not sure Hoyer is going to get that done. I think you can force feed Adams confidently and he can make plays for you. I'm not sure Jacoby Myers is in that level right now. Running back standpoint, man, I am losing my voice because I am talking alone. It is not easy, guys, doing this solo, just talking to yourself and trying to get through it, but we are getting it done for you. I'm giving Josh Jacobs one last shot. Production has been terrible thus far this season. Terrible. And that is because the Raiders are struggling to run the ball because the offensive line is not doing a great job run blocking. But this is a get-right game, guys. The way to beat the Chargers is on the ground. Even though they are susceptible through the air, they are a run funnel type defense, routinely allowing runners to get 10 yards per carry before contact. So if this isn't the game for Jacobs, I don't know when it is. Roster him, give him one last shot, see how he does, and then make your decision to either get rid of your bag of Josh Jacobs cards, or if you have confidence that he's going to turn it up for the rest of the season. 2 more games to go, guys, and the second to last one, we got another low total, New England at Dallas with a 43.5 over under for the game. You're playing the Pats, not me, guys. There's nothing that excites me on this Pats offense against this angry, ferocious Dallas team that we're going to see coming off of a loss. They've heard it in the press all week. They're going to be eager to hunt, so the passing game is a no-go for me. Dallas run defense is probably the way to attack, but I'm not super high on Ramondre to break the slate. If you got him, start him. It's your best opportunity against the Cowboys defense. But if you've got other options, definitely put them in the lineup over Ramondre Stevenson. This could be a very low-scoring game for the Pats as we see the Cowboys really be focused and try to get back to that dominant caliber to avenge that loss that they had against the Arizona Cardinals last week. Now, who's going to be carrying the Cowboys against this Patriots defense? And the answer for me is Tony Pollard. He's getting elite level usage, guys, about 25, averaging about 25 touches a game. You can't ask for more than that. And I think that's because you have an old school coach in Mike McCarthy calling the plays. Back in the days where you used to see running backs get quite a bit of touches and you would run them out of the league in like 3 seasons. Back to Pollard. He leads the league in carries inside the 10 with 15. That's quite a bit for a running back who has only scored once on the season from a rushing touchdown. Positive TD regression is coming, and a monster game is on the horizon. If it's not this one for Tony Pollard, you can plug him in and be confident that you're going to hit in one of these next coming games for a 30-plus point breakout for Tony Pollard. Now, CeeDee Lamb is my only other player for the Cowboys. Dak is just struggling, and as I just mentioned, they are coming up empty in the red zone. However, the Pats blitz quite a bit, and you might not know this, that CeeDee Lamb was one of the highest targeted wide receivers when blitzed last year. So it could be a nice volume day for CeeDee Lamb. And if he does get blitzed and Dak can manage to connect, you might see a big chunk play happen where he takes it to the house. On to the final game. I need to hydrate. I need some water. My voice, I'm limping to the finish line. I'm like that big D end who picked up a fumble and he's rumbling and you're praying that he can cross into the painted area. That's where I am right now on this Arizona at San Francisco game with a 44-point total. You guys know I'm a Niner fan, so come to me. Jump in our Discord if you want to chat anything about this slate or learn more about the bot or want some key insight on who my Niners are playing and how I think they're going to do. So right now, what I'm going to tell you about this game is it's a big-time mismatch in the trenches, and that's the way that I like to play fantasy. One of the first things that I do is I look at the discrepancy between the offensive line and defensive line of the players that I am rostering. Because if the offensive line is superior to the defensive line, that means that the quarterback is usually going to have a longer time to purvey the field, find somebody who's open. The receivers are going to get into their routes, and you're going to see bigger chunk plays and a higher success of converting that target into a reception and yardage and points for you in your fantasy matchups. So with that being said, the 49ers, both sides of the ball, let's start on defense. Do we want anybody in the Cardinals? No. Why? Because the 49ers defensive line is ranked number 2 in the league, and the Cardinals offensive line is ranked number 23. We already know about Bosa and the pressure that he brings, reigning defensive player of the year. But do you know about the 49ers defensive tackles? They've got Hargrave from the Eagles, who was a dominant defensive tackle for them on their Super Bowl run last year. Now he is paired next to Bosa on the D line as a D tackle, and you also have Eric Armstead. What does that mean? That means that those two guys are going to feast on the weak interior of the Cardinals offensive line, which is going to cause pressure in the face of Josh Dobbs and going to stifle the running games of James Conner. So if you were thinking of sneaking in a Hollywood Brown because he's doing decent for you, I might think against it. If you were looking to roster James Conner because you saw he had a nice game against the Cowboys in my last breakdown, I told you that is the way to attack the Cowboys is on the ground. That's not the way to attack the Niners, and they've upgraded that defensive tackle spot. They're notorious for shutting down opposing running backs, and their D-line is just stronger. They've got the best linebacker in the game in Fred Warner as the QB of that defense from the middle linebacker spot. Not a good play for any players. I'm not interested on anyone on that Cardinals offense. Now, on the other side of the ball, where you might have some interest is the 49ers matchup on the trenches here is Niners O-line ranked number 7 versus the Cardinals at number 27 for their D-line. Guys, As I just mentioned, games are won in the trenches in the NFL, and they provide a recipe for fantasy success with chunk plays. CMC, Mr. Christian McCaffrey, is a go each and every week. This matchup favors him greatly. I think he will get his early and often in this game, but I do think they're going to spell him with Elijah Mitchell, which we saw last week. Mitchell got some run, but it didn't take away from CMC's fantasy value. He did put a bunch of points up, so you can confidently roster CMC each and every week. Now, the Cardinals like to play zone defense too, like the Niners, but the Niners have a weapon that's named Deebo Samuel, who goes off and plays his best games when facing teams that are playing zone defense. He's just got a knack of finding the holes, and he's a yard after the catch monster, which is why they nicknamed these 49ers weapons the Yak Monsters, the Yak Brothers, whatever you want to call them. They just managed to get it done after the catch once the ball is in their hand, and zone defenses allow them to find that space where they can get in and make a big play. So Kittle's in play too to find a hole in this offense. He hasn't in this defense. He hasn't done a lot thus far this season, but this is a game where he should be able to find some room to maneuver in that zone and make big plays. He's done it against the Cardinals in the past, and the Cardinals aren't the strongest against opposing tight ends. So Deebo and Kittle are on my radar this week as plays that stand out for the Niners outside of CMC. However, the Niners receivers are nursing injuries. Deebo has a knee injury and a rib injury, so monitor that. Brandon Ayuk is coming back from injury, something that you want to keep your eye on as well. If they are both out or they seem to be downgraded where you don't want to play them, and they might be on a snap count, I think you're going CMC and Kittle. However, guys, Brock Purdy is a sneaky play here for a multiple TD quarterback on week 4. I really do like this play. I like the opportunities that he's going to have with that Niners offensive line against that weak defensive line of the Arizona Cardinals. You're going to see Brock Purdy have the time that he needs to look for a Deebo, Ayuk, or a Kittle, or maybe even hit CMC on a screen pass and sneak away with a 2 or 3 touchdown performance. That might be a good way for you to buy him low and fill up your roster with some of the other big name players like a Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen, and just create a unique lineup that will help you take down that 100K tournament. So that wraps up the breakdown, guys. Now, my partner is not here, and each and every deep dive Friday, we go into our Flagplant fantasy picks. And we need to do a recap of that because we didn't do our Tuesday takeaway show as I was traveling and he was negotiating with his agent to come onto the show for more money, which we don't have because we need more subscribers and more views. We've just eclipsed the 100 follower count, which we're super grateful for, guys. Do me a favor before we get into these Flagplant fantasy pick recaps from week 3 and onto mine for week 4. Give us a like, subscribe, share this content. The more eyeballs that we get, the better it is for us to grow this community and do bigger and better things with this bot that we are building. That's free 99, free for you to use in the Discord. We're building layers upon layers. We got some cool secret AI stuff, artificial intelligence stuff that we might be working on. All right, so breaking down last week's week 3 fantasy Flagplant picks. The champ from week 2 was Brandon. He defeated me by a slim margin. I had David Montgomery go out and I had DK Metcalf go out of that game. And he took home the championship belt. I told him, don't put your fingerprints on it, Brandon, because I'm coming back for it. It's coming back home to Mark, coming back home to Daddy in week 3. And let's see how we fared. Brandon's picks: Jerry Jeudy, 13.1 fantasy points. Bijan Robinson, 10 fantasy points. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 19.6 fantasy points. For a total for Brandon's team of 42.7. Now on to mine, on to Mark's team. We kicked it off with Travis Etienne, 17.8 fantasy points. Went back to the well to DK Metcalf, who let me down the week before. Got me a total of 17.2 fantasy points. Then I went with Zay Flowers against that weak Indianapolis Colts secondary. What'd he do? He dropped an egg for me. 13 fantasy points. For a total, and drum roll, can't roll my tongue, 48 points. And as I said, that belt is coming back home to me. I want you to wipe those fingerprints off if you got them on. That belt returns home to me, to daddy. And being that you're not here this weekend and my Flagplant fantasy picks are coming up next, without competition, it's staying home for 2 weeks. Brandon, what are you going to do about that, my friend? All right. Mark's Flagplant fantasy picks. Always a tongue twister for me, but when the pressure is on, I get it right. Tutu Atwell, guys. As I mentioned before, it's a great matchup for Tutu, catching over 70% of his passes when facing zones, facing a heavy zone-type defense. He's got 8 targets in 3 games. As I mentioned before, he's moved all over the formation to get it done. Matt Stafford is an assassin. Will be able to find him in this zone. He will make big plays. Can't roster Puka Nacua, so I am going Tutu Atwell for my first pick of the week for fantasy Flagplant picks. Next up, I am giving you the value because this is a mini correlation stack in the same game, guys. Give me that flagpole. Let me plant it down for my second pick. It is Zach Moss, the running back for the Indianapolis Colts. As a Niners fan, I've seen this team get eaten up. Rams, I'm talking about, get eaten up on the ground every game that my Niners play. And Zach Moss, as we mentioned before, is a bell cow, getting an unheard amount of the snap share from the running back position. There's nobody behind him. If he doesn't get hurt, he is going to be one of the top 5 fantasy running backs this week. You heard it here first from your favorite bald guy, giving you fantasy info and advice. Zach Moss, mini correlation. Great way to start that 100K lineup for you in week 4 with a Tutu Atwell and Zach Moss mini correlation stack that most people won't be on. And my last and final FFP pick before we close down the show and you win that 100K is TJ Big Boy Hockenson of the Minnesota Vikings. The tight end, as I mentioned before, has gotten 8 targets in 10 of his last 13 games when suited up for the Minnesota Vikings. Many people are going to be on the big splashy playmakers of the Vikings with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. But when you're facing a zone defense like the Carolina Panthers like to play, give me Mr. Hockenson, who's going to find the holes, get open in the middle of the field, attack those seams, score a touchdown or 2, have himself a day. Maybe 8 catches, 80-something yards, and 2 TDs is my bold take to wrap up this segment of Fantasy Flagplant picks for week 4. And again, I will be a champion 2 weeks in a row because I got no competition. Guys, let's close this one up and do us a favor. Drop into our Discord, say hello. Let's build a strong community. We can rate each other's lineups. We can have banter back and forth. We can get some of your Flagplant fantasy picks on the show next week. We'll see you soon, guys. Give us a like, give us a share, give us a subscribe. Do all the things for us, guys. This is Mark. I'm signing out for week 4. See you when you got that 100K in your pocket. Cheers, guys.